Recording in progress.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the first Edgewalker Cafe of 2026. Very exciting to have so many of you here. We've had over 100 people sign up, and we'll see how many folks show up. I'm Judy Neal. I'm the founder of Edgewalkers International, and this event today is a very special panel. Some folks have been with us before in the past, and some are new today to Edgewalkers, and we welcome you all because it's such an important conversation. There's so much going on in the world today that seems to be a result of unhealthy masculine energy. And there's so much of a need for change, and Edgewalkers are naturally called to change. And today's topic, led by our senior associate Edgewalker facilitator, Susan Furness, the topic today is the role of women in influencing change. And I would probably add the role of the divine feminine, if I could, Susan. And this is looking at the Edgewalker qualities and skills that women and men use, but particularly we're talking today about how women use these Edgewalker qualities and skills. The Edgewalker qualities are, see how well I've got them memorized here: self-awareness, passion, integrity, vision and playfulness. And the Edgewalker skills are knowing the future, risk-taking, manifesting, focusing, and connecting. So we're looking particularly at the 3 I's that Susan has lined out for us: integrity, imagination, and impact. So the subtitle of our topic today is Harnessing the Influence of Women in Amplifying Integrity, Self-Awareness, and Playfulness to Shape Tomorrow's World. So Susan, it's my great pleasure to turn it over to you and to your wonderful panel.
Judy, thank you so much. And what a sort of a wonderful way for Edgewalkers to walk into 2026, topping that 100 registration mark for this very timely, quite critical conversation, which I have to say, the topic was chosen many, many months ago. And, we danced around a little bit with using the top line, the role of women, because, of course, it's the role of us all, isn't it, to influence change. And as Judy pointed out, Edgewalkers indeed are all about being at the leading edge of change. And as Edgewalkers, we come in all shapes and sizes. However, we chose women, really, I feel, for that sort of much larger use of the word women, bearing in mind when you break it up, it's very, very taken care of and being fulfilled with men, women, but to really honour our maternal side and the side of actually giving birth, either metaphorically or literally. I mean, I'm not a mother, but so I don't mean it necessarily from giving labour-led birth, but from doing our work, from doing our labour. And it's just such an honour to have such an eclectic panel. I mean, a panel of 4 wonderful voices, which of course means we are tipping over the edge of the 60 minutes today. And I urge you to stay if you can, because we have a little surprise at the end. Those of you that know my panels know that I love a little bit of difference for the finale. And we've got this for you today also. But I think it's very important now for me to just identify in the room your panel. We sit within you in the room, although I think you do get a speaker burst when the speaker speaks. But so I'm going to take you around to the panel who will wave. And first of all, we have Leigh Johnson. Can you wave to everyone there? There's Leigh in the white. Hi, Leigh. And Suzi Clark. Suzi's there. We're sharing a similar colour palette today, as I see a few other of you are in the room. And Samantha Johnstone, who is also an Edgewalker facilitator. Hi, Samantha. How are you? And last but not least, the one that was very courageous to come in with us, Mark Wentworth. Mark, there you are.
Hi.
Mark, hi, Mark. Now, I'm going to stay with you, Mark, and just ask you as well if you sort of tell us a tiny bit about yourself, because I feel that you can do that better than me. Although, indeed, you and I have known each other for quite a while now. And indeed, it doesn't have to be long, does it? Because it's the depth in which we know each other. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about you, and then I'll fold it over to one of your panelists.
Sure. So, hi everyone, and it's great. We've been talking with Susan about this topic for quite some time now, because to make it relevant to the theme, I've been working with goddesses, specifically with Greek goddesses, the Greek goddess archetypes, specifically looking at the role they play as part of, as Judy said, as the divine feminine. So it's that sense of how do they live within each and every one of us? How does it help me to know that within myself? And equally, when I was many, many moons ago, before I did any of this, I worked in London airport. And equally at the same time, I was training to be a makeup artist in TV and film. And because they knew that, very often they would say, when I was working in the airport, they would say, would you come and take over the makeup counter for us? And I can't tell you how many women said to me, I trust your opinion more than other women because they might not tell me the truth.
Whoa.
So even before I started knowing all about this, and that's what made me think of, and that's why I find it quite relevant and why I like doing this work.
Wow.
Yep.
And that's quite an important topic, actually, that to bring up about, do we nurture each other? And that sort of makes me want to go to you, Suzi Clark, to introduce yourself, because interestingly, you and I spoke either this morning or yesterday about do we support each other as women. So could you introduce yourself, Suzi, and maybe just say a little bit about that?
Hi, Daddy.
Yes. Hi there, everyone. I hope you can hear me without echo. I'm a working woman. I'm a director at a London-based events company called Kit and Caboodle. I'm an author. I write humour mainly, plays and music, and I'm currently working on my second book. It's called Honeybees and Heartburn. I'm an artist, but only since lockdown, because I found it's cheaper than therapy. I'm a public speaker. I love a captive audience, especially if I'm in a facility where they've locked the doors first. I'm a mother to 3 amazing grown-up daughters. I've got 7 brilliant grandkids and 3 very good-looking sons-in-law. I've got to say that in case they're listening in. I've survived being widowed, divorced, fired, evacuated, don't ask, and being an only child. And oh yes, I consider myself an edgewalker, so I always have a lot to say, and I'm really going to enjoy being part of the panel today. So far, so good.
Yeah, Suzi, thank you so much indeed. you are a natural edge walker. So whilst we have you there on camera for a minute, can you just speak into that notion that do women actually support women? Go on the back of Mark's story at the makeup counter at the airport.
Mark's slightly devastating story at the airport. you know, I really passionately believe that women, particularly women in senior positions, should support juniors more. And in fact, I've just heard this morning that as a result of the testimonials I've been making to Middlesex University, one of our young marketing manager, who's from India, has just been invited onto quite a big panel for the alumni at Middlesex. That would never have happened if she hadn't had my endorsement to the alumni of Middlesex. It's really important that you come to trust one another. I've learned so much from the young women that work with me, and it's giving back in kind, isn't it? It's bringing my business experience and intuition to their up-to-date learning, and those two together, if you can bring those together, then you get to a position of trust, and then it's win-win for everybody.
And indeed, Suzi, I mean, going back to, nurturing, that instinct in us, just to hopefully want everyone to do well, and to take on your notion of kindness, sort of appreciating that love and kindness evokes love and kindness in others. But I wonder, Leigh Johnson, I mean, you come from law and the courts and trials, and I'm sure lots of tribulations. I mean, do we really support each other? What really goes on in those corridors when people are in, if you like, a little bit in conflict? And whilst you're answering that, let us know more about you, the trial whisperer.
Okay. Well, my answer to the question is absolutely that women do support women. I believe women support the world. All human beings come into this world through women, and that's a point of power. Women are powerful indeed. I'm a trial lawyer and a trial consultant, and that part of my work uses the way of the warrior, right? That's about force, confrontation, winning. The other part of my work, I'm an author, I'm a psychodramatist, I'm a creative. That comes from what I call the way of the water. And the way of the water is through contact, relationship, persistence. And I believe that there is a need for both of them. I do believe that the natural power that women occupy in the world, as you said, is the way of the water. And that is the power of nurturing, of being in relationship, of being in contact, in connection until change takes form.
Oh, wow. And I love that you brought the notion of the energy of water into that, Leigh. I mean, we all sort of probably used at some time the connotation of the ripples. And the ripples are so critical, aren't they? And in fact, it's a perfect juncture to introduce you to our fourth panelist today, a similar name as Leigh. So Leigh's Leigh Johnstone, and then we've got Johnson, then we have Samantha Johnstone. Where are you, Samantha? I can't see you around. There you are. Hi, Samantha. Let me let it trickle over to you, and you, the strategist, and how the ripples are so important in the work that you do in the world, ensuring that we sort of step boldly onto that road less traveled. Over to you, Samantha.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. When I think about the ripples into the broader world, I spent the last 20 years working in advertising and mass media and entertainment. And I believe entertainment media has a big responsibility on what we're putting out into the world and telling women's stories and reflection of what women are and how we work, and affects the culture of how women are received in the workplace. So with that being said, my work now stands on the intersection of spirituality in the workplace, spirituality in marketing and sales, and how exploring how leadership and performance can change when you recognize that it starts within, and how you can impact others throughout.
Well, in fact, you do, Samantha. I know because I work with you so much, and I just sort of like to pick on that up on that before indeed I fold back into you, Suzi, just to let you know, just to ask you a question, but just to fold in some play with words and using impact as in the example that I'm giving. Yesteryear in the boardroom, we might use what's our objective. I'm seeing a lot more of the question now being what's our intention? And of course, along with what's our objective would have been, so what's the outcome? And I'm now hearing what's the intention and what's the impact, Samantha, that we're going to create. And indeed, if we can put what's the extraordinary impact, we are really then talking into influencing change, aren't we? And of course, change means growth, and growth means change, doesn't it? Because you really can't change without growth, and you can't grow without some change. But of course, Leigh, Suzi, I said I was come back over to you. Suzi, I mean, when we're looking at growth and change within the organisation and looking at the signals that we're sending out, particularly to women in our field, and I know you're presently working in the global events sector, how are you translating what you're sensing in that field into a possible direction that could influence change? Over to you, Suzi.
You're on mute.
Let me help you get off mute, but you can just touch your keyboard, your space bar, and it will come off. There you go.
I'm off. So I mean, it's a great question, but it's a huge question because
isn't it?
Global events agents, business, but every sector is different. And here in the UK, where we've come through lockdown, having lost all our work within a week, and we've got back on our feet as a small to medium-sized enterprise. At one point, we were women only in our company of 10, with one brave soul who was our financial director. Now we find we're recruiting more men, and we've got more of a balance. I think intention is great, but when you are a director, you are also looking at the bottom line and what you are going to bring in to try and invest in the future, not just for you, but for all the people that you're working with and for your clients as well. So I think it's finding a balance between intention and then using influence, and the influence of your creatives in particular, to scope dreams that perhaps clients haven't considered before. And nobody is better doing that than some of the women who work with us, because women have been dreamers for a long time before they've even come back into the workplace. And there's a real richness about their dreaming. And so you make sure that your intention setting allows scope for that. And just a very quick story I will tell you, because I went to a talk years ago with Richard Branson, the ultimate entrepreneur, and he was asked to describe what he looks for in an ideal employee, and he painted a picture of a flock of geese flying in your traditional V shape, probably Canadian, coming into the winter sun. And everybody said, oh, that's interesting. And what part of that V shape is your perfect employee? And he said, it's not in the V formation at all. It's the goose that's flying in the other direction. And everybody laughed, because they said, well, the goose is probably going the wrong way, it's going to die. And he said, well, who knows which way that goose is going to go? But that goose was an edge walker, because that goose has broken away from the pack and it's trying something new. And so we always look for innovation and risk-taking in even our most junior employees. I hope that answers your question.
That's a lovely, quirky story, Suze. Thank you very, very much. And thank you so much for mentioning risk-taking, which, of course, is the second skill of an edge walker. And indeed, that whole sort of answer that you were talking around there more was moving into the first skill of an edge walker, which is knowing the future. And so that goose, and of course Richard Branson, had quite a nose for what might happen in the future. And I'm wondering, Leigh, if we can take that back over to you and see how you sense. I mean, you call yourself a trial trial whisperer. I mean, how you can sense how the storyboard of a trial might roll out. Not, I mean, you don't have to go too deep into it, of course, but and how the different people played their role, and indeed, what energies are present. And we also had someone in the chat, Craig, really loving the way you talked about the way of the water. So I don't know whether that ripples back into an answer that you could give for us there, really looking at knowing the future, Leigh.
So the way I put together cases is through using action methods, psychodrama, using skills where we step into the role of each character in the case. And so that the lawyer knows the case inside and out. And this is about storytelling as well, right? Like we try to find what is the best and most persuasive story to give to the audience. And with that, I think you have to have parts of the warrior and parts of the water. And when I was talking about water, I think of the image of think of a massive rock and the relationship between that and water. So what happens when water causes a rock to change over time? Typically, the water shows up, makes contact, and stays in relationship until something happens, until change takes form. That's the way I approach my work as well, right? Quite often, when I'm whispering, when I'm looking for something, I don't know what I'm looking for, but it will reveal itself to me if I'm patient and if I ask the right questions. So I believe it's important for us to have both of these energies, right? Because if I just come with the way of the warrior, then I can have great power and I can create great change. But some things don't respond as well to the power of the warrior. And in that way, I have to look and create, see how I can enter into relationship with this thing and see how I can perhaps change it over time.
Oh, wow. How powerful is that? I mean, I'm hearing in there the sort of critical energy of active listening, and even listening to those words not spoken. And,
yes.
and in doing that, I love it, and in doing that, really sort of be able to sort of play out, the sensing of the future, the knowing of the future. And we have one of our qualities in Edgewalkers, a quality of being, is playfulness. And I must just give you the definition. I might have got it slightly wrong, Judy, do forgive me, but the ability to be light and bright, but keep everything specific. And I'm going to keep this light and bright now and come over for some playfulness to you, Mark, because I bet your ears went up when you heard psychodrama, because I know that's one of the areas in which you play with colour. And so how can you sort of bring us into, I don't know, using intuition and playfulness in order to influence change? Over to you, Mark.
Well, before we go there, what I'm really interested is, but like I said, coming back to what I said at the beginning about that question is about, I trust you more than the, I think one of the biggest things, if we want to talk about the divine feminine, is about acknowledging, and maybe it's that sort of shadowy side of what women do to other women. I noticed in our conversation already how quick we moved away from that. Because in the 20 years of working with this, I can't tell you how many organizations I've worked in where literally some of the biggest dynamics or the biggest conflict have been how women treat other women. Yes, there's a great sense of support, but equally there's a lot of underlying stuff as well. And I think in a way what Leigh was talking about, and again talking about the goddess archetypes, thinking about intuition, the essence of the goddess, the Greek goddesses, is they all have specific qualities, like every archetype. So I'm listening to the intuition and I'm thinking, oh, yes, that's the goddess, that's Persephone. And I'm thinking about leadership because all of the goddesses will lead differently. Athena will be a little bit challenged by that word playfulness, because it's all about strategy and goal orientated. So it's thinking about which one am I? Which one? Because then we bring out our strengths, play to what is your greatest, and then find other people who carry the other qualities. But coming back to what I was saying about what women do to other women, that I put that across because we can't, in a way, society can't deal with that. Because even if you look at our stories, the fairy stories, we can't deal with how that a mother can do something bad. So we have to put her in the role of a stepmother. Look at all the stories, look at Cinderella, look at kind of the thing. It's always the stepmother that does something bad. So there's no place, there's almost like this unconscious place that we can't go to that allows for that. And I really think it's an important conversation to have, maybe not here, but to think about that. And that sense of, in answer to your sense of playfulness, it's that way of, I work with psychodrama, dynamic theatre, as a way of bringing that to life, of bringing those stories and looking at, I like the shadow stuff. So it's looking at the shadow side of these things. Does that answer, does that answer the question?
There is no answering
No.
to the question. I
Yeah.
thought that juicy. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know about anyone else. I can see some comments coming in the room. You've even got some in the chat. You've got some agreements there. That was just wonderful and generative, and I loved all of that. And particularly, bringing in the trust word, and indeed competition. Are we competing? Are we collaborating? Are we in co-opetition? And I sort of feel this is a wonderful segue into you, Samantha. Where I'm just going to say, as I'm bridging it over to you, here we've got some messy conversations going on in the world today, which of course we can't have time to really uncover or weave into today's conversation. But, we've got conversations in government, we've got conversations around the boardroom table, and of course, conversations around the kitchen table. And all of these are critical, and all of these, however small or large those conversations are, Samantha, they influence change, don't they? And I know one of your sort of particularly, what I've seen of you, I don't know if you know this in yourself, you're just so good at connecting. And I don't just mean connecting the dots or connecting, all of the elements of the puzzle, and indeed connecting people. But given everything that you've heard so far, can you connect any of that together and just say to us what you feel could be a really good solution to influencing change if we were just to take a couple of things away? Over to you, Samantha.
Well, that's a big question. I will say the one thing that triggered in my mind when we talked about the competition with women is I think that comes from more of a lack mindset instead of an abundance mindset. And that's women, men, that's human in general. And I think if we operate, I always talk about under some spiritual principles of knowing that the world is abundant and there is no either or, there isn't all, and we all are connected. That mindset shift, that language shift, I believe can change a lot as far as making change and transformation. And I believe women are really primed for that, right? So we have some innate abilities and that the world has tried to teach out of us. When we get into the workplace or we get into life, we try to operate outside of our natural rhythms and outside of our natural selves. And I think the sooner that we can tap into that, we could bring that forward into the world.
Oh, see, Samantha, you answered a big question so succinctly. I mean, you really did give us some rituals or sort of mechanisms that we could use in connecting. And I thank you for that. I mean, but whilst you're still with us, I mean, could you talk a little bit maybe into integrity and the way that we can, you know, perhaps it gets mooted around a lot in the boardroom and in corporates, values, how we can really have a values-led approach to change and risk. And whilst you're answering that, I'm going to leave the room because someone's knocking at my front door. So don't go and stop until I come back or give it to one of the others.
Will do. I find that now that she's walked away, I'm like, okay, I forgot what the question was already.
Values-led changes to approach.
Values-led.
Change.
You want to come in?
I think sometimes we are, I go back to the abundance or the fear mindset. I think a lot of us.
I want to say
I think I cannot. Goes back to the fact that we're led through fear of losing jobs, fears of losing money, fears of losing position. And when we look more into faith via the fear, then we won't necessarily feel like we can't follow our values. I think the values are a culture thing as well. And when I say culture of a company, how much is that attributed to it, and culture of your society as a whole. But leading with values usually means that you have to have some type of trust in the fact that the karma and value systems impact change and not the other way around.
Thank you so much, Samantha. I caught some of that. And indeed, you know, just taking that word value and bringing it into change and growth, because, you know, if we are looking for growth that's positive growth, and I do hear mooted around that there's a strange economic term called negative growth, and I don't really know the definition of it. Maybe someone in the room does. But, you know, we are looking for value to create values, aren't we? You know, values to create value, aren't we? You know, and how do we measure that value? And I'm just leaving that as an open question. But, you know, I ran to answer the door because it kept knocking, and it was just a wonderful example. And I tried to invite Roya in. My next door neighbour hasn't seen me much for 3 days, so she wanted to come and see if I was okay. I mean, how wonderful is that? And the other wonderful thing, actually, Roya is Iranian. She comes from Iran. So the last few days must have been awful for her. So it really should be me going in to take care of Roya and her husband, Matt. So I will pop in later. But just moving forward and just holding that love that I've experienced from the neighbours, and I saw some hearts going up in the room there. So thank you so much. I think that was you, Judy. I'd like to come back round to you, Leigh, and you know, really talk a little bit more about the Edgewalker second skill of risk taking and courageous action. And in that, I think, bring in one of our qualities of being, which is integrity. I mean, I've got a feeling you must be dancing with integrity and risk almost every conversation that you have when you're storytelling the future sensing of the trials. I mean, can you talk to us about how values-led risk can actually support a situation and maybe help rewire a situation, and/or could it just become, you know, it becomes a norm and goes very flat in a conversation? Over to you, Leigh.
Okay. And so when I think about values-led risk, I think what Mark was talking about with the archetypes. In psychodrama, we call those roles. And when I think about society and the roles within that are ascribed to women and the roles that are ascribed to men, right? We men typically we give them power in institutions, right? Our businesses, our corporations are quite often run by men. That's their domain, the boardroom. The domain of women in our society is typically the living room. Yes, we are given power to be able to bring up children, to raise children, to nurture, to be in relationship. These are both powerful tools. I think perhaps sometimes for women, we want to enter the boardroom as women, and we don't understand that trying to enter the boardroom is like trying to change the fruit that's already on the tree. We have no influence there. Our influence is at the level of the planting. It is at the level of the seed, right? We can, when we plant the seed, when we plant the tree, we can influence what type of fruit is going to produce. We have very little influence and a whole lot of risk when we're trying to influence in the boardrooms, when we should be, when our main sphere of influence is in the living room, in the bedrooms, and around the kitchen tables, like they used to tell stories around the campfires. And what I'm talking about now here, I've kind of moved to storytelling, right? Because that's how we make sense of the world. How do we tell stories? What is life about? Who are we? And I will say that the stories being told in the boardrooms today are the same stories that were being told in living rooms and kitchen tables years ago. That's what we have to look at. Rapid change is not sustainable. We have to look at change over time. And change over time, women control that, I believe.
Well, thank you again for bringing in a very important currency when we're looking at growth and change, and that's the currency of time. And of course, time is a currency. You know, how we spent our time is an adage we all possibly say once or twice a day. And also thank you for honouring the past or history and reminding us that some of the mess we're getting ourselves into, some of the conversations that are mushy and messy, and indeed some of the joy isn't new. These have gone round and round and round the cycles of history, and indeed a very good friend of ours who passed actually just over a year ago, Dr. Elizabeth Sartorius, who has graced our screens here on the cafe, an evolutionary biologist, pointed out that how could she be considered a futurist as an evolutionary biologist if indeed she wasn't a realist and indeed a pastist. So, you know, having to appreciate the past to be real so that you can really get, as you were saying, Leigh, a good sense of the future. And she also stressed that we have to be nimble and flexible and understand that we need to be a little bit lighter as we move forward, and we can't carry everything from the past. And so I sort of couched the term about how, you know, unpacking your baggage so that you move forward with luggage, and light luggage at that. And so that brings us, I think, very beautifully into, because I'm hearing there, self-awareness and how important it is to know thyself and love thyself, and really as well have self-interest. And if we use interest as in compound interest in finance and, you know, interest in the more currency form, that, you know, if we don't have self-interest in ourselves and love ourselves, how indeed can we truly support the world that's around us? And so I'd like to bring that back into you, if I might, Mark, and talk to us a little bit about how we can know thyself better. And in fact, there was a point in the chat as well about this.
Yeah. So I think kind of like, you know, well, for example, kind of edge walkers, it's a great sense of kind of knowing your, you know, there's so many different ways for thousands of years, we've looked for all these different methodologies to how do I show up in the world? How do I know, whether I know myself through edge walkers, through astrology? But from the goddess perspective, I know I keep coming back to the goddesses. What Leigh was saying, when you were saying, Leigh, about actually, about the around the kitchen table and in the boardroom, I was sitting here feeling a bit kind of, I can imagine Athena getting on her armor, and because she belongs in the boardroom and the last place she wants to be is sitting at home around the kitchen table. Demeter absolutely loves it and would congratulate and say, yep, let's have a board meeting as long as it's around my kitchen table. But Athena really wants to be in that in the boardroom, fighting it out. That's where she belongs. So I think, in answer to what you were saying, Susan, it's about it's about knowing thyself, but knowing where are your strengths. Where do I naturally gravitate towards? In kind of in ancient Greece and other cultures, they would watch children play. And, when we're young, we play very spontaneously. And from that, they would watch and see what are these natural characteristics and these natural ways of being that are actually showing up. And from that, you would then be said, well, you're either a daughter of whatever the goddesses were or a son of whatever the gods were. And from that, you would then be taught and educated, in inverted commas, to bring out those natural gifts and talents.
Oh, wow, Mark.
Because then you're not, because let's say from the goddess perspective, let's say you are naturally, and this has come from working with, one of my examples would be working with a lady in the Middle East, in Bahrain, of actually, she was encouraged to actually take law degrees and become kind of like in business and etc. All she wanted to do was to marry, have children, support her husband, and to her mother and her aunts, they absolutely said, you are letting us down. You are failing us because we didn't have these opportunities. So you are failing us. And yet she'd suffered all kinds of depressions, weight gain, etc., battling all this. And as soon as she followed, she was naturally Demeter. As soon as she followed that, she blossomed. And what I love about it is she didn't lose her business aspect, because when after her second child, she set up a mother and children space and how women could go into business while still working from home.
Oh, how wonderful, Mark. I mean, thank you so much. I mean, I'm loving this analogy with the goddesses. I'm seeing lots of hands coming up the room. You're getting a lot of support on that. And of course, it reminds us, doesn't it, in the case of that young woman from Bahrain, that we can indeed wear different overcoats at different times, if we like. It's just how well and how gracefully we wear them. And indeed, Judy and I often sort of dance with that, with the 5 Edgewalker archetypes of change. I mean, it doesn't mean to say that you are just a flame keeper. Oh. Indeed, one can try on the energy of a guardian, for example, which is often needed in some critical situations, and in fact probably needed quite a lot today, isn't it? And I just want to acknowledge, as you were talking there, Mark, just lots of lovely comments from you in the audience. Thank you all. Kate Watt, thank you for loving the energy of water and the elements. And Craig, thank you so much. Craig, I'm coming to you in a minute, by the way, get ready. Marsha, thank you too, from Pittsburgh. You're right. This is a wonderful way to kick off the new year. Maria Hargo, thank you, from Dubai. I'm going to say Bahrain again, but of course I know actually you're in between Dubai and Abu Dhabi, aren't you? And you're feeling the scarcity mindsets and the influence of competition between women. So I suppose I'm reading into there, Maria, is it that, if we feel we don't have enough, then competition grows between us, I suppose, whether we're men or a woman. So I'm not going to unpick that and Maria says yes. So, but what I'd like to do is, Mark, I was butted in a little bit when you were talking, and I'm going to come over to you, Suzi, so just get ready for this. A little bit around, you brought up play again, and observing, how we can start to play with our heart, or heart first. We go heart first into creation. And you won't be surprised to know that I'm tempted to bring in Dr. Maria Montessori. The Montessori is the name of a creative learning education, which is anything but linear. It's fluid. And 150 years ago in Italy, she became one of the first female doctors, and then transitioned into observing the growth of the under fives. And she noticed, of course, what we all know as mothers and fathers and aunties and uncles, is that children learn with their heart first. They go heart into something, then they get their hands dirty, then they do something with it, and then they only come up for air to ask why. So it's the head last, is the natural way that we come into the world. We come in with heart, hands, plans, and then the head. And of course, we go into the traditional education system, and indeed it gets linear, doesn't it? So, Suzi, lots been said, but if we come over to you sort of with the headline of focus, we've got two skills in edge walking, manifestation and focusing. If we bring it over to you, could you talk to us a little bit about how focusing can help manifest the result? Over to you, Suzi.
It's an interesting one. Can you all hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting one. I was the school governor of state schools, secondary and primary, for 18 years, so I have a particular interest in education. And I was really interested when you mentioned your Iranian neighbour just now at your door, to read yesterday that actually literacy has gone up in Iran over the past few years, even under the Islamic Republic and its suppression of women. They do allow women to go right up to college level. You can study at college, but you can't study STEM subjects, so science, technology, education, engineering are closed to women. But they can, and so as a result literacy has gone up. But very interestingly, the employment of Iranian women in the workplace has gone right down. They are now less than 14% of the operational workforce in Iran. And when this research looked into it more deeply, it was found that educated women preferred to wait at home and to stay at home and to share their learning with their families, to feed their learning, to use their learning to influence the next generation, which I thought was really a very interesting turnaround, and one that we haven't seen before in the West, really. So I think all of this, it comes back to Leigh's question about, is it the boardroom? I was smiling. Or is it the kitchen table, to go back to Mark? Is it Athena in the boardroom, or is it Demeter at the kitchen table? And going back to Samantha, it's a question of abundance, but it's also a question of women lacking self-confidence. And the women that I particularly enjoy working with are not the ones hot to trot who come out waving their diplomas, having just done, their bachelor's and their master's, and they are overflowing with confidence, and it's a beautiful thing to see when they come to be recruited. The ones that really interest me are the ones like me, who took an 8-year break to bring up children, and then didn't know how to get a foot back into the workforce, because those are the women that have got skills that don't exist on your standard CV, but boy do they make really good employees and colleagues, because they have this cornucopia of skills that they have got while they've been rearing children and taking them to ballet and all the rest, and running a house and sitting at the kitchen table and chatting with other women. And if you can get them to realize that and harness those skills, they bring a richness to boardroom discussion that maybe boardrooms occasionally lack. And just to put some research behind that, I don't know, those of you who are probably much younger than me don't remember a book called The Peter Principle. It was brought out in 1969. And it said that most people get promoted until they get to their own level of incompetence, which is quite a dreary thing to think about if you're a company director. And a few years later, in fact only about 6 years later, a guy called Schuller brought out some more research which he called the Paula Principle. And he asked why it is when women outperform men in so many areas of education, particularly in the UK, I don't know about the USA, they're flying, these women, and then you get them into business or the workforce, they're under promoted, they are not, they're not understood, they're scared to take risks. And he said, why is this? And he gave a 5-point answer. And one of the points was that women are too honest. Not only do they lack confidence, but when they look at a job description, they'll pick on the one skill that they don't have because they've been out of the workforce for 6 or 7 years. That might be linked to technology. It could be anything. And they will think, oh, I don't know how to do that, so I'm not going to apply. But when he interviewed men, they looked at the job spec, they picked the one thing they were really good at, and they thought they'd wing the rest. And so they went for the job. And it's their confidence that took them through. So I think it's also about integrity, maybe, I can't say misplaced honesty, because honesty is never misplaced, but about those people who are interviewing and giving an opportunity to women, give them a chance and wait to hear what it is that perhaps it's the quiet ones can offer a conversation which is sometimes a lot more meaningful than the ones who dominate a boardroom.
No, Suzi, thank you. I mean, there's so much you said there, but I'll just take that last bit, which sort of folds into The Right Kind of Loud, which actually is a book by someone who often comes to our cafes, Kim A. Page, The Right Kind of Loud. And sometimes silence can be the right kind of loud, but there's other times where you've really got to amplify your voice, and not to a point where it turns into debate or argument, but where the generative conversation can live on. And I do urge you all to go into chat just to have a look at some of the wonderful comments and suggestions. Maria Hargo is busy there putting some lovely ones in. Thank you so much, Maria. And I'm going to now just ask a question from the audience. And Judy, you mentioned to me that Craig, I think it's Craig D'Souza, would like to talk. Craig, can you come off mute and just introduce yourself and then choose who you want to ask the question to, or just throw it to the panel and we'll handle it. Over to you, Craig.
Hi, thank you, Judy. I put my hand back down because I realized I've got about 6 different questions and I couldn't choose one. And so I'll just go back. First, this has been incredibly moving and useful. And I guess I'll just ask my first question, which is to Leigh and and Mark. I mean, I'm just noticing myself because I live in San Francisco. I'm a queer Buddhist artist, good little liberal, and whenever I hear the trope of women are awful to each other, of course, I'm like, oh no, it's because of the patriarchy. So I have all these messages, and so there's some trouble there, and when there's trouble there, that's the thing we need to talk about. And so I would like to hear more about this idea of when women get caught up in the story, they need to step into the masculine to get ahead, survive, or change the world, or do something that's really virtuous. That's when we get in trouble. And I think it might be related, Leigh, to what you're talking about. I was really moved by this idea of the way of the warrior and the way of the water, and the relationship of that to long and short term thinking. Water over a really long time will change that rock, but then we get caught up in this story of we are in crisis. We have no time. We have 10 years to reverse climate change, or we're all dead, game over. And so we double down on this masculine, get it done, panicked energy. And so it feels like, I've long felt like feminine and masculine are clearly out of balance, but also long and short-term thinking are out of balance. And so if you could hum a few more bars about that, I feel like it's a really useful conversation to be having.
Yes. So, and I agree. I agree that to the extent that women are at each other, it's because we live in a patriarchal society and it's been set up that way. Uh, I believe that in terms of the way of the warrior, we do believe that the boardroom, what happens in the boardroom is more important than what happens around the kitchen table. And we do believe that what happens today is more important than what happens tomorrow, but that doesn't make it true, right? And that doesn't make one power better than the other. And I think that's where we get in trouble. In my field, when I see women who are willing to change themselves or to take on a more masculine approach or a more warrior approach for access, I feel that they lose influence. Quite often when I am hired by people who are adept in the way of the warrior. Quite often they know how to win, they know how to cut off heads, right? But usually they're coming to me to learn the way of the water. Coming to me to learn that playfulness, to learn how, because they're out of balance. When you got too much warrior, you are out of balance. And that's where we are in the world today. We're out of balance. And we need to bring in the way of the water. And what we say is, but that's going to take time. It is going to take time, but we still have to do it.
Thank you. Thank you both. Craig, thank you very much for coming in a very moving and a very useful way, just to take two of your words and honing right into that, this critical point again around time. And it's critical that we do it now, even if it's going to take the rest of time, right? It's important that we show up now. And so, believe it or not, time has nearly got our heels today. And we did say that we were going to fold into a bit of a longer cafe, maybe up until 15:15. So I must start that happening now. And so I'm going to go round my panel and look at those future facing narratives where Craig has just led us and Leigh's just caught for us, and have a look at what if we were visioning ahead, to the next 4 or 5 years, maybe up to 2030, what must leaders do to help the narrative change? What must we start doing now? And that, I should say women leaders, because we're here talking about the role of women, aren't we? But I'm just going to say leadership. And actually, I'd like to stretch that word leadership, that it's all of us, that we're all leaders. But so the question to the panel is, could you just name a few rituals, to take a word from that we used a little earlier, little rituals, a little tactics, some actions that we should do if we're going to be the change we want to see. Mark, do you reckon I could start with you?
Yep. So just touching on a little bit of what Craig was saying is, to me, I believe that if we want to heal the only way to heal the masculine is through the feminine. We can't do it any other way. that is first and foremost. Whatever that means to you, that's within me, that's within women, it has to be through that way. And I would say it's the first part is that. The second part is about knowing yourself, sort of bringing what Leigh was saying is, yes, when things go out of balance, that's when it's a bit of an issue. But know where you're strong, know what your strengths are, and equally know what's in the shadows. But importantly, healing the masculine has to be through the feminine, because like Leigh said, we come through the mother, and I big that the divine mother, and we go back to the mother, as in we go back to the earth and the collective.
Thank you, Mark. And again, for maybe the fourth time in this conversation, stressing the presence of shadow. And I'd just like to add a couch to that and call the lighter shadow vulnerability. And just to say to us all that I found that there's value in vulnerability, just like there's value in vocabulary, because words matter, they really do matter. And indeed, it's also okay to be vulnerable if you can dig in and find that value. So thank you so much, Mark. Samantha, could I come to you? What should leaders be normalizing or naming now?
I think women, we need to normalize what the system could look like for us to operate effectively and efficiently. Right now, the systems of the workplace, the systems of society aren't necessarily set up for our success, especially as we continue to grow and adapt, whether it's ourselves or our families. So I think that takes a lot of self-awareness and self-confidence in order to move in that direction and operate your teams or demand that of within your team or within your leadership of yourself. So I also think that we need to use our voices more. AI and the digital era that we are in is influenced by the content that is online. And a lot of times, going back to what Suzi was saying earlier, sometimes women don't feel as qualified to put our voice out there, but we need to make sure that our voices are communicated online and other places so that it's picked up throughout the future as well.
Thank you, Samantha. Suzi, I'm going to come to you last, but just while Leigh's speaking, you might want to look at chat, because Sean Conboy has made a lovely comment on your previous conversation to us. So Leigh, I'm going to sort of nail that down a bit more, refine in a more refined way for you. And could you even be so bold as to name one collective action that we could call forward from maybe this conversation, or from what you're aware of is being spoken about in the streets, in the boardroom, with the trial rooms today, that we could take forward that could indeed result in growth and change over the next 4 to 5 years?
So the one collective action I think that we can each individually take is to become involved in your community. This is about community, right? I think one of the problems that there's masculine energy and feminine energy and the boardroom and the kitchen table, they're in competition with each other, but they're not. We need both. We need both. We need the masculine, we need the feminine, we need the boardroom, we need the kitchen table, and we need them to come together in community, in our societies, as sisters and brothers, as husbands and wives, as children, and in the family, as opposed to having competition. Right now, we have the family and institutions that are in competition, and we need to come together as one, and so that we can support each other.
Thank you, Leigh. I'm so pleased that you brought up the word community. I mean, I talked a little bit about, I brought up leadership many times in this conversation. Of course, you know, we've got lots of ships, haven't we? We've got relationship, we've got partnership, we've got leadership, and indeed we've got community ship. And I'm sure we all love the notion that the word, or the reality that the word community, when broken down, actually leads towards common unity. And I just hope that that's the common purpose for common good, using common sense. So, Suzi, without leading you in any way, I know you've now read the chat, possibly, just take the floor. How would you like to sort of close your part with us today before we go into the finale?
Well, I mean, I love Sean's Comboy's comment about women, how women, you know, will stand up and put their hands up and sort of throw themselves into things. I think that's true, but I've certainly found in my career, which is very long, that the best way to get women involved, if they're a bit shy, is not to go to the boardroom, but to go to places like, well, it used to be the smoker's corner, of course, because most of the women were so stressed they were puffing away in a corner, you know. Well, what it did was it destroyed the hierarchy because it went across the board, people who smoked, and then when that got banned, I call them coffee machine meetings, because you often got people clustered at the coffee machine who were from all levels within quite a large company, and you'd find it was really creative. And even if I didn't want coffee, I'd go and kind of hang around the coffee machine and find out that there were women who were offering ideas who maybe they would never have got the opportunity to come into the boardroom and put their ideas forward. But when you sat and listened, it was very rich. So what we do in our company now, we have a caboodle day because we're Kit and Caboodle, so every month we have a caboodle day. And the ones that have been really the most rich is where we've gone away overnight and then played really silly games and got those senior people to get back in touch with their playful nature, which often a lot of women don't lose because where they're child rearing, they're having to, I was the only one in Chicken Shed Theatre Company who would dress up as a Pritt stick to keep a corporate client who was Henkel adhesive, to keep them on board. All the rest of the professional companies said, no, excuse me, we're professional actors. I was like, we need the money. So guess who climbed into the Pritt stick outfit? I mean, I think we need to stay playful. I think we need to stay in touch with the child in us. And I think women are very good at doing that. The question is, how can we harness it better so that they are acknowledged, so that they are rewarded, and they grow in themselves and the confidence to bring into the workplace. That's what I'd like to see happen.
Oh, Suzi, well, thank you so much. I think in there we've got another 4 cafes, don't you? That's just wonderful. Thank you very, very much. Look, I'm now going to Judy in a few seconds hand this over to you so that you could, if you would, give us a real capture from your Edgewalker lens. And of course, those of you in the room probably know, maybe some of you don't, but I'd really like to honour Dr. Judy Neal as the founder of Edgewalkers International, and indeed the author of the book Edgewalkers, 2006. The tagline of that book is people and organisations that take risks, build new bridges and break new ground. Judy, you truly are the ultimate Edgewalker, and we're just so honoured to have you as our guiding light. You do really shine towards our collective North Star. So thank you so very much. Judy, can I fold this over to you for one of your captures and then some news, perhaps?
Absolutely. Thank you, Susan, and thank you to this amazing panel. It's like I'd love to spend more time with each one of you. I've been so inspired by what you've shared. And also by the chat and the questions and the comments and the resources. So to save the chat, you can do that by going to the chat box and looking for the 3 dots, and there'll be a pull-down menu that says Save Chat, and it'll save it to your computer. So if there's things you value that you want to save, please do that. And listening to all of you, I was remembering my first day as the only woman on a faculty of 48 business professors. And one of the male professors pulled me aside and he said, I want to mentor you. And one of the pieces of advice he gave me was so interesting. He said, when you go into meetings, interrupt the men. Notice that they interrupt each other. I want you to interrupt the men. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I was taught to be the good girl, the polite girl, that you never interrupt. That is rude. I see Leigh shaking her head. And, you know, it's so strange that a woman has to be taught how to be more patriarchal in order to survive in that situation. And so, but two things happened. I did learn to interrupt. It was really uncomfortable, but I learned how to do it. And people began to listen to me more than they had before. I'd come from the corporate world, and and they listened to me more in this setting when I interrupted and got my voice in there. And the second thing that happened was they started asking me to lead various committees. Now, part of that was you had to be the token woman, and they wanted me on like all these committees and no time to actually get my work done. And eventually I started saying no, and the more I said no, the more they respected me. So it was such an interesting experience of trying to fit in to that masculine dominant environment, and then eventually things started just being more human. And so it was a people got to know each other and love each other and support each other, and it didn't matter male or female. Especially in an academic setting, competency tends to matter more than dominance. And so it ended up being a very healthy environment that allowed me to create the Edgewalker work. It allowed me to study workplace spirituality and use this very unusual topic as my leading area of research in a business school, which now is more accepted. And so you brought up a lot of memories for me, and just wonderful sense of experience. So a couple of things that I'm taking away from our wonderful panelists are, Mark, you bringing up the shadow side of what women do to women. And I think that any oppressed group would have that same shadow side. So, but that's something we could study. But the issue of trust is so central. And how interesting that a woman would say to you, I trust you more than other women because you'll tell me the truth. And in the work I've done on change management, particularly with Daryl Connor, if you want to be a trusted advisor, which is one of his terms that he teaches people how to do, if you want to be a trusted advisor, you have to be willing to speak the truth. Those are the people who have impact. The people who are softening the truth don't have the same impact. They can check the boxes that I had so many training sessions and I did so many group meetings and I made so many reports, but the ones who speak the truth without blame, without judgment, are the ones that have the impact. And so that's a powerful tool for women if they want to influence change. Leigh, I love what you said about the way of water and the way of warrior. That's going to really stick with me. The idea of water being flow and being long-term, and also the power of the kitchen versus the boardroom. And then Suzi added, is it Athena in the boardroom or Demeter in the kitchen, integrating what you said, Leigh, and what Mark has said, and Suzi pulling that together. Also, Suzi, I love the idea of the goose flying in the opposite direction, because normally we think of the goose and the leader and how that leading goose falls back and someone else takes its place. We love that collaborative model, but to turn it around and say, oh, there's one going in the opposite direction, and what's he or she up to? The edgewalker goose, as she's described it. And so for us to look at what is that edgewalker goose? Who is that, and what are they having to teach us? Samantha, you talking about how competition comes from fear versus a sense of abundance. And I think back to the Course in Miracles, where it says, choose love, not fear. That is one of the most basic spiritual principles. And in the Bible, it says 7 different times angels come, and when they approach humans, the first thing they say is, fear not. And so as women, men and women feel fear in oppressive workplaces, toxic workplaces, challenging, even in healthy places when we're asked to do something we've never done. So how do we overcome the fear? And it's like, feel the fear and do it anyway. Notice it. Say, is there any information here that's useful to me? And pay attention, because sometimes when we're afraid, it's because something dangerous is happening. But if it's really old programming, it's something you can let go of and say, this is an area I can grow into, I can expand. Susan, you talked so much about growth. And so one of the sort of clues that we might be growing is a sense of fear. And say, well, thank you. Okay, there's an edge I can push here. So the thing I take away from this is one of the things that we can do is to really highlight women leaders, tell their stories of people who integrate Athena and Demeter. And the first person that comes to mind about that is Eileen Fisher. For me, she's a wonderful example of someone who has integrated both Athena and Demeter. And I'm sure you could think of others. And we have had some of those kinds of women as leaders speaking here on our Edgewalker cafes. We certainly have some of them today on our panel, including Mark. And so telling these stories and letting these voices come out, and so that we know it's possible. It's kind of like the 4-minute mile. Nobody thought the 4-minute mile was possible until somebody ran faster than the 4 minutes. And so people think, oh, women can't be that kind of Athena, Demeter, integrated leader. And yes, they can. And so we tell their stories. So with that, I want to start sharing some quick announcements. And I'm going to ask some of our Edgewalker facilitators to share the things that they're doing. And I'm going to start with Samantha, since she is on the panel, and she is the host of our next Edgewalker Cafe in February. And so, Sam, would you please share the title of what you're doing and just a little bit about it to invite people to join us next month?
Sure. Like I mentioned, my professional background has been in sales and advertising and media. And I am hosting the cafe next month, Sacred Art of Selling, Sales and Marketing. Your sales and marketing process can be just as impactful as work that you put out into the world. So we're going to talk about how you fold your spiritual principles into your business practices.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's at 11 a.m. Eastern on February 12th. It will be the same link as today. So please join us then. And then I want to turn it over to Amy Lynn, if she's still with us. Oh, I don't see her. Amy Lynn Durham has created a podcast platform that will really highlight edgy podcasts. And so we'll be putting something in the Edgewalker newsletter about that as a business opportunity for you. And if you're not subscribing to the free Edgewalker newsletter, you can do that on www.edgewalkers.org. Anne Iselli, are you here? Yes, Anne, you can unmute yourself, and you have an upcoming workshop that you're doing, envisioning, that you want to tell us about?
Yeah, thank you, Judy. And hello, everyone. And thanks for the great webinar. Thoroughly enjoyed it. On January 22nd, I'm going to start visioning. And it's a technique that, for those of you who might be familiar with Michael Beckwith, he's at Agape in Los Angeles, created this wonderful visioning tool And I'm going to be facilitating it every 2 weeks at Thursdays at noon Pacific time. So please reach out to Edgewalker. It'll also be there. And I can give you all the details. It's free, just love offerings, but it's meant to just kind of start the new year and continue through it, really focusing in on where your passion is, drawing from within and getting in touch with what is driving you, what really excites you, what really is just motivating you, and giving that quiet time to reach for it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. And can you put your email in the chat, and then people can reach out to you for more details?
That sounds great. We'll do that.
Thank you. All right, and my final announcement is that we are running another Edgewalker Assessment Certification Program to certify coaches and workshop leaders and consultants in our 2 Edgewalker tools, the Edgewalker Profile and the Archetypes of Change Assessment. And information is on our website at www.edgewalkers.org. And thank you again to this wonderful panel. And thank you, Susan, for the gracious weaving that you have done in this conversation. So back over to you.
Well, you're more than welcome. And I think, of course, big appreciation goes to all of the work that's being done by the Edgewalker associates, and also to you all in the room, because you really are staying over time. We're at 5:22 now. So thank you for being with us. But I promised you a really special finale, and specialness can be short and sweet. And so I'm going to pass this over to my dear friend and global Edgewalker, Suzi Clark. Please play us out, Suzi. We just need your mute off. Just bang that board. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Susan. Some time ago, I wrote a musical while I was driving my children round in the car. It's never a good idea. But it took on board a short story I'd written for the BBC about a potter in Ali. I was working in Bahrain. Mark will appreciate this. And we had a potter in the next village. And the girl, Nabila, the granddaughter, wanted to be a potter, but of course nobody would let her because she was a girl. And I wanted to compare her story with the teenager who lived round the corner from me called Debbie, who really didn't want to do much with her life except to be a mother and a wife, which made me laugh when, Mark, you gave that example. And I'm just going to give a couple of verses from each of them and leave it with you. So this is Nabila's song, the granddaughter of the potter in Ali. Why can't I do what I most want to do in the world? Just because I'm a girl, just because I'm a girl. Well, if I was a boy, you'd be jumping for joy, can't you see? I want to be me, but you say, do your work, Nabila, do your work. This is no place for a girl, yes, you say, do your work, Nabila, do your work. You have been born in a man's world. Oh, I could fly, spread my wings, touch the sky. Won't you open the cage? Won't you set me free? Turn the key. Let me be me. And then up the road, you've got Debbie, whose mother wants her to be an orthodontist, go to Yale, hopefully, do pretty well. Mum and dad always busy. And here's poor Debbie, and she just wants to be a mother. Little mother, just want to be a mother. I don't want to be a star. I could never strive or endeavor to achieve. Can't you believe that I'm not what you are?
Suzi, I think we all deserve to come off mute now and applaud you. Thank you so much. That's so very, very good.
That was wonderful. Oh.
Absolutely wonderful. Mary, come off mute and tell us what you thought of that. Oh, sorry, Mary.
Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, I loved that. I really love it. And I love that the music and writing songs and putting all of these ideas into a tune in one way or another allows us to somehow repeat it and let that water flow through and inform us, reform us in some way.
Bless you, Mary. You talked about love and light earlier in the chat, and I just want to say just how much radiance you bring into the room. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you for all bringing your value and your vulnerability and your desire to influence change into the room. And as Brené Brown said, vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, of creativity, and indeed change.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
We'll send you the recording, or it will come.